Collection Stories is a celebration of the Fashion Museum's amazing, wonderful, fantastic collection of historical and contemporary dress. And here in Collection Stories, we are shining the spotlight on the 19th century collection. So we have all of those kind of things that I suppose are the nuts and bolts of dress. So shoes, parasols, bonnets, all of the things that go to make up a fashionable look. But in a sense, the objects are just the foreground, because in the background is the whole stored collection. So what visitors will see is lots and lots of ranks and ranks, in fact, of boxes. So for example, we have our 19th century wedding dress collection here in Collection Stories. We have one absolutely beautiful star wedding dress, but behind it are 185 boxes containing the entire 19th century collection. So Collection Stories is all about the Fashion Museum collection. At least 100,000 objects in the collection, and every single one of those objects has a story to tell.
As you say, you have chosen star objects to feature in front of your collections here. We haven't got time to go through all of them, but we're standing in front of the shoe collection, and I know this is a star object you do want to tell me about, and maybe you could just choose a couple more after that.
With great pleasure. These shoes are all belonged to a lady called Mary Crowninshield Endicott Chamberlain Carnegie. She was an amazing woman. She was an American woman from a political family who in 1888 married Birmingham and UK politician Joseph Chamberlain. And she moved to this country, and she loved clothes, and she went regularly to Paris where to buy her clothes. And we've got here in the collection her enormous wardrobe, including over 30 pairs of her shoes. And here on display in Collection Stories, we've chosen the jewel-like ones from the 1880s and the 1890s. So this most marvellous purple, saturated purple satin pair, all embroidered with beads. There are also, there's a rust red satin, there's a pale grey satin, same style, but slightly different colours. And you can really get a sense of Mary's taste, her grace, her life really, because she was an important political hostess. She entertained with Joseph at Highbury in Birmingham a lot. In fact, in the here in the Fashion Museum, in A History of Fashion in 100 Objects, we have the dress by Worth of Paris that Mary wore when she had her portrait painted by Millet. So again, the more you look in this amazing collection, the more you see.
You mentioned wedding dresses.
Wedding dresses, yes. We have a lot of wedding dresses here in the collection, and some absolutely glorious pieces. And the piece that we have chosen for Collection Stories dates from 1900. And again, there is an American connection here, because it was made by a lady called, or a dressmaker called Mrs. O'Donovan on, I think, 7th Avenue, and was worn by a girl called Emily Poor, who in 1900 married a young naval lieutenant. And you should see this dress, because it's all made of cream silk satin, the most beautiful pleats on the bodice, but it has the most enormous long train. And what we've decided to do as well is that we've decided to display it alongside some of the accessories that Emily wore on her wedding day. So there is a ribbon corset from, again, which Emily would have worn to achieve this astonishing silhouette. A little pair of garters, a little pair of shoes as well, which are beautiful. But what we think has happened is that she's actually sewn some little ribbons in them, because, and you start to make up stories about thinking, oh, you know, would the shoes actually have come off as she wore them? So she put this little pair of ribbons on to make sure that she didn't walk up the aisle and leave a shoe behind like Cinderella.
Now look, if we can move away from this new exhibition opening this coming weekend to the displays we've just walked through, can you tell me a bit about that?
Yes, here at the Fashion Museum we have a headline display called A History of Fashion in 100 Objects. And what we've done is we have chosen 100 objects from the Fashion Museum collection. And the Fashion Museum collection, which is one of international outstanding importance and numbers at least 100,000 objects, but we have narrowed it down and chosen 100 star objects that show really the development of fashion, or give an indication of the development of fashion from the point at which dress survives, which tends to be the beginning of the 18th century, really, although we do have some 17th century pieces here on display, right up to the present day. And so highlights really from the history of fashion is, I've talked about Mary Chamberlain's Worth dress, and that is really, really, really beautiful. I have to say, I also love some of the early very colourful 18th century silks. So early on, visitors will see a bright popping saffron yellow silk from the 1740s, which is the kind of dress which you might have seen in Bath in its Georgian heyday. So the early pieces are beautiful and lovely, but then I also love some of the more modern pieces. And we bring fashion right up to date with a scheme called the Dress of the Year scheme. Each year we ask a fashion expert to choose the outfits from the international collections that they think is the most exciting, directional, sums up a moment. And in our most recent Dress of the Year is from 2018, and it wasn't a dress at all, because it is a soft baby pink, beautiful quality. It's a wool suit. Kim Jones, who is a British designer, his first collection for Dior Homme, for Dior menswear, it's absolutely exquisite. And it's based on the oblique cut that Dior did in the 1950s. And it's teamed, so that's baby pink for a boy. And we have baby blue for a girl, and the baby blue is a pair of really natty running shorts, but over the top it's worn the most ornate, the most beautifully crafted, glittering silver and blue 18th century style coat, and that's by Louis Vuitton, by Nicolas Ghesquière for Louis Vuitton. So both cutting edge, contemporary Paris fashion, and you can see it here at the Fashion Museum in Bath.
There's also what you're calling an intervention featuring gloves.
Yes, we are very fortunate here at the Fashion Museum in that the Worshipful Company of Glovers of London, so one of the city's ancient livery companies, have since the 1980s lent to us their extraordinary collection of historic gloves. And this includes a collection of about 120 17th century gloves. It's the best collection of gloves anywhere in the world, and it's right here in Bath. And recently, the Worshipful Company have, I guess, brought the whole of their collection together, because the collection includes not only these 17th century pieces, but pieces, fashion gloves from the 20th century, even from the 21st century as well, and some curios as well, like we have a glove that was worn in space. We have a costume glove that was worn in one of the Star Wars films as well. So they are now all here in Bath, over 2,000 pieces, and what we wanted to do was to create a series of display interventions really celebrating this association between the Fashion Museum and the Worshipful Company, but also showing how some of these gloves, in a sense, sort of fire off the exhibits in A History of Fashion in 100 Objects. So, for example, I talked a little bit about the cosmonaut's glove, and it was worn by a Russian cosmonaut. Well, actually, he started off, when he went into space, he was a Soviet cosmonaut, but because he was in space for so long, when he came back to Earth, he became a Russian cosmonaut because his country had changed. And we've put this alongside some pieces from the 1980s as well. So that gives a kind of context. So again, there's something different for visitors to see in the glove intervention stories as well.
You have used gloves to display thoughts and emotions in a completely different way too, involving an artist who uses gloves as part of her art.
Yes, absolutely. We're very pleased here at the Fashion Museum and very honoured to work with esteemed textile artist Roseanne Hawksley. And Roseanne has very generously gifted 3 of her artworks featuring gloves, or actually it's 5 of her artworks featuring gloves to the Worshipful Company of Glovers of London. And what we've used that opportunity to create, it's in a sense, it's a mini display within the glove stories, really at the heart of the Fashion Museum and the visit to the Fashion Museum. And in a sense, it's a change of pace, it's a change of gear. Because when visitors visit, they will first of all see the 17th century gloves, they will see some fashion gloves as well from the 18th century, early 19th century. And then you round a corner and you see a whole line of gloves nailed to a plank of wood, really. And these are gloves used as an artistic medium. So Roseanne Hawksley uses gloves as an artist might use paint or an art, and really in a sense of kind of collage and assemblage as well, because her work does address universal and quite difficult themes of love and loss and memory and remembrance. But she does this through the medium of gloves. And there's a particular connection with us here at the Fashion Museum because she visited with her late husband Brian. She visited us way back in the 1980s and was immediately struck by the 17th century gloves on loan to us from the Worshipful Company of Glovers of London. And in a sense, this was kind of like a Damascene moment for her in her artistic practice. And she came back from the visit to Bath and immediately started incorporating and creating found and used and discarded gloves, but in a kind of 17th century, in a very Baroque manner as well. And we are very proud to be able to display Roseanne's work here at the Fashion Museum.
One final thing, because I'm turning this interview into a marathon. I'm sorry I'm making you speak so much, but for the first time, the Fashion Museum itself is going into print.
We are indeed. We're extremely excited that to coincide with the opening of the collection stories here at the Fashion Museum, we have a brand new and rather wonderful guidebook just delivered, and it features a selection of objects from the history of fashion, 100 objects, and it also, there's a lovely central section which is all about collection stories, so it lifts the lid, in a sense, on some of the boxes that visitors can see here in collection stories, just giving a glimpse at this wonderful, amazing, designated collection of outstanding national significance that's based here at the Fashion Museum right here in Bath.